I'm Troy Sage.
And I'm Andrew Smith, and we're calling this one a little bit part two.
Yeah, kind of part two.
So to speak. We did a video on how many hours are involved in negotiating a short sale, and we wanted to spin that from an agent's perspective.
From an agent's perspective, thank you.
We want to spin that around a little bit, and one of the questions that we get from homeowners all the time in our own business is, how long is all of this going to take? And the answer is, it really depends. And who does it depend on? It depends on you. Because we need information from you to get things going up front. So we use the term over and over and over again, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. And in that situation, if we're sending you a complete list of documentation that you need to get, and it takes you 7 to 10 days to compile that information, well, how long does the process take? Well, I guess you started the day we sent you the list, so you're 7 to 10 days into it now. And then it just moves from there. So it's important to understand that the time it takes depends on how active a participant you are.
Yeah, the more proactive the homeowner is in putting a packet together, the smoother it's going to be. And let's explain a couple of things. Is as you've already addressed, it depends from lender to lender. There's going to be different time frames, right. And we're not going to get into HAFA guidelines and FHA pre-foreclosure and so on and so forth. But as a home seller, you have to understand this, is that from the time that the package is completed and the home is listed, then you have to make sure it's marketed properly. You have to make sure that there's a buyer involved. And then once the buyer gets involved, then the buyer has their packet that they have to provide, which is basically the purchase agreement and a short sale addendum.
Could be proof of funds on top of their pre-approval letter.
Right.
If it's a Bank of America, there's a buyer information sheet that needs to be included. So there's little nuances depending on, again, who the lender is.
Right. So let's say in a perfect world that, number one, make sure that your agent has a list of documents that you, the seller, need to provide. If they don't have a list and they're not sure what's going on, not trying to criticize real estate agents, but as a home seller, you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in your financial future at risk. You really need to make sure that your agent knows what they're doing and they're providing you a list of stuff prior to sitting down, possibly the first time, to list the property.
Well, and the reason that's really important is, and we bring that up, is because a lot of agents unfortunately don't do it that way. You call them up and you explain your situation, and their first thought as being a real estate agent is, first thing we need to do is list this house. So they go ahead and they list the property and they start marketing the property, and they're basically involved in the marketing aspect right now. That's the hat they're wearing, so to speak. Then all of a sudden you get an offer in, and you get that offer, and there's things that need to take place with that. Now all of a sudden they go, oh, we've got to build this package, and they start compiling it. I've seen cases where in excess of 30 days after the offer comes in, before it's ever submitted to the bank, the buyer on the other side is sitting there going, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything?
And the buyer walks.
And the buyer walks, especially if the agent goes, well, we haven't actually submitted it to the bank yet. Yeah. So again, it's really important to make sure that all of these documentation, you should be provided a list, as Troy just said, and you need to compile all of that and get most of that collected up front before the property is even listed. At least that's the way we always run it in our own businesses.
Yeah, and then for the seller's peace of mind, here's what happens. This is kind of a play-by-play in negotiating with any lender out there right now. Let's say you have all the documentation, you've got the offer, we have a complete packet, buyers and sellers, it gets sent off to the bank. Usually, in the first 7 days, there's only 1 or maybe 2 times that a negotiator gets to contact the bank. The first time is make sure that they receive the packet, and if they're slick, they're going to ask who's going to negotiate this. Has this been assigned yet?
Right.
Most likely not in the first couple of days. It takes a few days to get into the system. Even B of A that uses Equator, where you're not going to have a negotiator right away within 24 to 48 hours.
Exactly.
So for a seller, you get an offer, you're all excited, the package is all completely put together on Monday and it's sent off. Usually by Friday there's some kind of update for you. From that point, you're looking at anywhere from 7 to 10 days for the bank to order and perform what's called a BPO.
And it's important to understand that the update at that point in time, that first week, may be nothing more than we've received your documentation.
Yeah, it could be thanks for submitting this, we'll be in touch with you. A strong negotiator will contact that bank 2 or 3 times in that first week anyways to try to, get the grease on that squeaky wheel.
Right, because, critical, what we're trying to do in that first week, especially on the negotiating side, is 1, make sure the package has been received and they acknowledge it's complete. 2, we want to try and get that file moved along and assigned to a negotiator, because you can't do anything without your negotiator. And 3, we want to make sure that that BPO has been ordered, which is the bank's way of ordering an evaluation or valuation of your property to find out if the offer is in line with market value.
That's right. So now we're 7 to 14 days into when the offer was signed and agreed upon by buyer and seller. So we're saying this so that the seller doesn't think, wow, okay, we got an offer and we're going to have an answer here in like a week or two.
It
doesn't happen that fast.
Why wasn't it accepted?
That's right. So on an average, we're finding right now the first 2 weeks is getting the offer sent over, getting a negotiator assigned, getting the BPO ordered, make sure that your agent is very proactive in that BPO, and then at that point in time when the BPO comes back, they have yet another 7 to 10 working days to then send that BPO and the complete packet off to the investor, which is a whole other story, a whole other video. Just understand that if you're writing a check to B of A every month, doesn't mean that they actually hold the note. They're just the servicer. With that being said, now we're 3 weeks into the process, waiting for the investor to come back and give us a yes, no, or a counter.
Or maybe requesting some additional information, some clarification, some updated financials. Any one of those things can go on. In general, from the time that package is complete and you've got that offer and it's sent off, we've just explained that the first 7 to 10 days are critical. From there, it's usually going to be another 30 days worth of negotiations back and forth before you start getting close to an approval. So again, we're seeing an average of roughly 45 days out, in some cases 60, depending on what's going on. You may have approval from the first lien holder within 45 days, but you don't have approval from the second yet. So all of that starts coming together. So in general, just because you get that offer, don't immediately think you're going to have something within a week.
Yep. And remember this, we've already talked about the hurry up and wait. So remember, if it's going to take 30 days, you have another billing cycle that has come, which means you as a seller, you really have to be proactive. You have to provide your agent with updated financials, bank statements, check stubs, so on and so forth. So just because the offer was submitted doesn't mean we're done. And really, really important that you keep in mind that it's hurry up and wait. You're going to hurry up, get this packet in, and then be as patient as you possibly can, because there's hundreds of thousands of people applying for loan mods and short sales every single day. It's really about the power of that negotiator, but it's not going to get done in like 7 to 10 days. It's going to, on average, going to take 30 to 45 days, and you as a seller have to be extremely proactive and make sure that your agent is openly communicating with you and being proactive, so that you're constantly keeping that file up to date.
Exactly. And then again, just last point to point out to you is once you get that approval letter, that's when your formal contract for closing period begins. So if the contract says it will be a 30-day, if it's an escrow like we have here in California, or it's a 30-day closing period or a 45-day closing period, that day begins from the day you have approval from the lien holders involved.
Yeah, so juggling all this around, so Homer, so you understand also, the buyer that has the offer on the property, in California we have a short sale addendum, and they write in how many days they're willing to wait for approval. More times than not, that buyer will put money in escrow and let it sit there, and that kind of locks them into the property. Okay, when at the end of 30 days, let's say it's 30 days to get the approval, at the end of 30 days, that buyer can walk. So make sure you're working with an agent that is either negotiating on their own or using a company like ours, where there's open communication for all parties, and that they know how to juggle this. They have to make sure you, the seller, are engaged, to make sure that the buyer stays excited and engaged in the process, and that negotiator is pushing that file as hard as they possibly can.
Bottom line, we know it's very confusing. We know a lot of questions come up. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. As always, you can find us on the web, www.s2neg.com.
Have a great day.